At the terminal, after a heated exchange, my family canceled my return flight and abandoned me in London. No ticket, no wallet, no way to reach anyone. A woman who carried herself like old money, perfectly styled, approached me and said quietly, "Act like you're my business partner. My car is waiting outside." Then she added with a knowing look, "Believe me, they'll wish they hadn't done this." And she was absolutely right. I had no clue just how right. My name is Natalie Carson, and I'm 35 years old. That afternoon at Heathrow Airport, everything collapsed in moments. We'd arrived as a family, my parents, my brother, and me, for a vacation I'd substantially funded, hoping it would mend the fractures after my bankruptcy. But at the airline counter, the argument ignited instantly. I refused to wire additional funds to their account immediately. I was finally focusing on my own financial recovery. They turned vicious without warning. Irresponsible, broken, always causing problems. My brother had borrowed my wallet earlier for currency exchange. My mother had my identification to expedite all our boarding passes together. When they collected their documents and walked toward security, I realized my return booking was missing. They'd canceled it deliberately, announcing I could sort things out myself. Without a single glance back, they vanished through the checkpoint. I stood paralyzed, pulse racing, understanding I'd been orchestrated into this. No wallet to purchase another ticket, no boarding pass to proceed. I rushed to the service desk, pleading desperately, but airport staff directed me away from the secure area. That's when she appeared, the stranger in the tailored blazer who'd clearly observed my ordeal. She leaned in and spoke those exact words. In that instant of absolute desperation, I grasped her arm and followed her outside. As the sedan pulled away from the departures area, I glanced back at the receding terminal, a steely determination crystallizing inside. They believed they'd left me destroyed, but they were mistaken. If you've ever experienced family betrayal that fundamentally changed you, or questioned how far people would reach for dominance, share your perspective in the comments. What would you do if loyalty transformed into desertion? Drop a like, I read every response. Let's hear your experiences. The sedan moved smoothly through London's evening traffic, the streetlights casting shadows through the windows. I sat beside the stranger who had just rescued me from a crisis, my thoughts spinning as I attempted to comprehend what had occurred. The driver ahead remained quiet, concentrated on navigation, while the woman beside me gazed forward briefly before facing me. "I should introduce myself properly," she said, her voice composed and cultured with a distinct British accent. "Victoria Ashford, 45. I manage a boutique investment firm based in the city." I nodded, still clutching my small travel bag like an anchor. "Natalie Carson, 35. Thank you for whatever this intervention is." She offered a slight smile, not exactly warm, but authentic enough. "I observed you at the service counter. You weren't collapsing emotionally. You were attempting to problem solve. That interested me. Most individuals would have completely unraveled." I looked at her, surprised by the assessment. She'd been watching longer than I'd known. I didn't have alternatives. Security was about to remove me. Victoria settled back against the leather upholstery. "Precisely. Pragmatic. That's why I intervened. I require someone with that quality temporarily." She paused as the car merged onto a quieter street, then continued. "In approximately 3 weeks, I have a critical merger negotiation in Edinburgh. It's not merely business, it's where I finalize a major acquisition with traditional banking partners. They prioritize consistency, conventional structures. A divorced woman in her mid-40s, still visibly single, makes them uneasy. They question emotional judgment affecting financial decisions." I listened, assembling the pieces. "And that's where the business partner pretense enters." "Exactly," she said. "My marriage dissolved 3 years ago in a public scandal, my ex-husband's financial crimes. It's documented extensively. My younger sister, Helena, has been exploiting it to undermine confidence in my judgment within the firm, suggesting I'm too exposed to reputational risk. A stable professional partnership would neutralize that narrative temporarily." The mention of scandal resonated. I thought about my own bankruptcy, the commercial venture that had imploded, leaving me rebuilding from nothing. "I'm sorry about the scandal," I said. She acknowledged it with a nod but didn't elaborate. "It's strategic necessity. I need a credible partner for the negotiations, someone authentic, not a hired actress who'd appear rehearsed." I adjusted in my seat, the reality settling. "And you selected me, a complete stranger stranded at an airport?" "You maintained composure under extreme pressure," she repeated. "That's uncommon." The car slowed as we approached a private residence in Kensington. Victoria outlined the arrangement plainly. "You participate in the merger meetings and associated functions. In exchange, I arrange your return to the States tomorrow on a commercial flight, provide temporary accommodation here in my guest quarters, £35,000 in payment, and a replacement phone. Additionally, I'll assist you in discovering what your family is actually planning." Something about that abandonment felt orchestrated. £35,000. The figure landed substantially. It exceeded what I'd earned the previous year, but I wasn't prepared to commit blindly. "What's my exposure?" I asked directly. "If this is purely transactional for you, why trust me not to disclose everything?" She met my eyes squarely. "Legitimate concern. I don't trust you, but the arrangement would involve mutual confidentiality, and truthfully, I'm vulnerable as well. Helena has documented several recent decisions where the scandal might have influenced my risk assessment. One investment that underperformed significantly. She's constructing an internal case, questioning my capability. I need this to create breathing room." Her candor surprised me. She wasn't projecting invincibility. I weighed the immediate security, the funds, the opportunity to uncover whatever my parents and brother were orchestrating. After years of prioritizing their demands, this felt like reclaiming agency. "One additional condition," I said firmly. "My real identity remains concealed. No real names in professional settings if possible, and I maintain final approval on our background narrative." Victoria considered it, then extended her hand. "Agreed." We shook on it as the sedan stopped at the townhouse, an elegant facade, understated wealth. We entered quickly, the interior sophisticated but comfortable, rich furnishings, subdued lighting. I was shown to a guest room by Margaret, Victoria's housekeeper, a composed woman in her 60s. As she departed to let me settle, I stood at the window overlooking the quiet square below. Exhausted completely, but for the first time that day, a thread of possibility emerged. I had made a decision on my own terms. The guest room felt like refuge after the chaos, soft lighting, quality linens, and a perspective of London that made everything below seem manageable. I showered quickly, letting the water rinse away the residue of travel and shock, then changed into comfortable attire Margaret had provided. The replacement phone Victoria had given me sat charged on the bedside table. I picked it up immediately, navigating to the only contact I'd programmed so far, Brenda Mills, my closest friend from college, who'd remained loyal when everything fell apart with the bankruptcy. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with concern. "Natalie, Jesus, where are you? Your parents have been calling me non-stop." I sat on the bed's edge, gripping the phone. "I'm secure. In London, actually." "What did they tell you?" Brenda hesitated, then exhaled. "They claimed you had some sort of mental break at Heathrow, said the bankruptcy stress finally overwhelmed you, that you were behaving erratically, making accusations, and then just disappeared without explanation. They're framing it like you're not mentally stable, that you might harm yourself or make reckless financial choices." My stomach clenched. "That's fabricated. They canceled my flight, took my wallet." "I believe you," she interrupted gently, "but they're not stopping. Your father mentioned consulting attorneys about protecting you from yourself, something regarding emergency financial guardianship." The words struck like cold water. "They're targeting the settlement." "The bankruptcy settlement from your business?" Brenda confirmed. "Yes. From what I gathered when your mother briefly put me on speaker, they're concerned you'll squander what's left. In the UK, if they can demonstrate financial incapacity, there are provisions for appointed financial representatives, especially if there's evidence of recent poor judgment." I stood, pacing the room. Initially, doubt crept in. Had my post-bankruptcy behavior been that concerning? I'd withdrawn socially, made a few impulsive purchases, trying to feel normal, but then clarity sharpened. This was calculated, exploiting real vulnerabilities to construct a false narrative. Brenda, can you forward whatever they've sent you? Messages, documents. Already doing it, she said, and my phone buzzed with incoming files, screenshots of emails, a compiled list of concerning behaviors they'd documented. I scanned them rapidly, anger displacing any self-doubt. They weren't worried about me, they were positioning themselves as protectors to access assets. I thanked Brenda, promised updates, and disconnected. The townhouse was silent as I descended to the main floor, finding Victoria in a sleek home office reviewing documents. "I need to discuss something," I said directly, entering. She looked up, setting aside her papers. "Problem?" "Yes." I showed her the phone with the forwarded screenshots. "My family isn't just upset, they're building a case for financial guardianship, using my bankruptcy as evidence I'm incapable of managing my own affairs, specifically the settlement funds." Victoria scrolled through, her expression turning grave. "This is calculated. In England, deputyship orders require substantial proof of mental incapacity, but it's achievable if they demonstrate significant risk to property. They're intelligent. Framing it as protective concern makes it harder to challenge directly." I nodded, leaning against the desk. "We need to counter this immediately. Engage your solicitor to file preemptive documentation, perhaps a capacity assessment, or block any petitions." She didn't hesitate. "Simon Blackwell. He specializes in financial protection cases. I'll contact him now." Within 90 minutes, Simon arrived, a sharp professional in his late 50s, briefcase in hand. He listened as I explained, reviewing the evidence on a secure tablet. "They're establishing foundation, but we can respond aggressively. Medical evaluation, if necessary, financial records demonstrating competent management. I'll prepare opposition documents tonight." Victoria added quietly, "Helena's employing similar tactics against me, questioning my judgment based on the scandal, so we're both exposed here. Full transparency, my position isn't completely secure yet." That admission grounded things. I wasn't aligning with someone invulnerable, we were both fighting parallel battles. As Simon departed with instructions, I returned upstairs and opened the laptop Margaret had provided. I researched UK deputyship law, reading about petition requirements, court hearings, independent assessors. For the first time, passive waiting wasn't acceptable. I had to arm myself with knowledge. Sitting there in the quiet room, the screen illuminating the darkness, a shift settled deeply inside. Protecting what was mine meant acting immediately, not hoping others would behave properly. The merger preparation intensified from the moment Victoria assembled her advisory team in the townhouse conference room. Financial projections and partnership agreements covered the table, tea steaming in cups as everyone engaged. I didn't wait for invitation. "May I review the negotiation timeline?" I said, pulling a chair beside the lead consultant. He slid it over without question. Within minutes, I identified conflicts, 2 critical meetings scheduled too closely, risking delays that could cascade through the entire negotiation period. "This requires adjustment," I pointed out, marking modifications with quick annotations. "Shift the due diligence presentation earlier. It establishes credibility before the final valuation discussion." The consultant raised an eyebrow but nodded. Victoria observed from across the table, silent, clearly noting the intervention. By that first session's conclusion, I'd restructured the stakeholder mapping to prevent awkward positioning, separating competing banking interests while clustering potential allies for organic relationship building. When a major investor emailed reservations about committing fully, citing industry whispers about Victoria's post-scandal judgment, I asked to review the correspondence. Reading the exchanges, I drafted a response immediately, personalized, acknowledging their long-standing professional relationship while highlighting upcoming ventures with solid backing. "Send this," I told the team. "It addresses the concern without appearing defensive." The investor responded positively within hours, reconfirming their participation.
Victoria pulled me aside afterward. "You're making yourself essential." "Good," I replied, "because I'm not here to be decorative." She gave a brief laugh, the first genuine one I'd heard from her. From then on, she included me in every strategic decision. I managed the Edinburgh venue coordination next, visiting the location myself to map logistics, ensuring presentation areas avoided sightline obstructions, positioning technology displays where they'd capture attention immediately upon entry. Working with the audiovisual team, I insisted on professional lighting for the presentation areas, maintaining participant focus during critical disclosure moments. Victoria opened up more during late working sessions. One evening, reviewing acquisition risks, she admitted a recent investment error, a property portfolio acquired hastily post-divorce. "Helena circulating it as evidence I'm not thinking strategically," she said, rubbing her temple. "She's accurate that the scandal affected my judgment, but wrong about my ability to course correct." I leaned forward. "Then demonstrate correction. Extract performance data from the current quarter. Highlight improvements already implemented." She considered it, then incorporated my suggestion into the board communication. We rehearsed public interactions relentlessly, entering mock scenarios arm in arm, fielding imagined questions from financial journalists. Our cover story, meeting at an investment conference in Manchester several years ago, felt scripted initially. "Too formal," I said after one rehearsal. "Make it natural. I was coordinating conference logistics. You complained about the venue technology. We connected over shared frustration with inadequate infrastructure." Victoria tried it, adding her own detail about a malfunctioning microphone during her keynote. It landed organically, even drew a genuine smile from her. As deadlines tightened, I handled consultant escalations, personally negotiating with the legal team when document reviews ran late, managing the financial auditor over last-minute disclosure requests from banking regulators. Victoria deferred to my decisions increasingly, trusting the instincts developed from years managing complex corporate restructurings. The night before the Edinburgh negotiations, I conducted a final review alone, checklist in hand, every element aligned, presentation materials perfect, technology rehearsals flawless, contingency protocols for delays or complications locked in. Back at the townhouse, trying on the outfit Margaret had helped select, elegant charcoal suit that fit precisely, I caught my reflection. The woman staring back moved with authority, eyes focused. Work had pulled me from survival mode into something stronger, control earned through capability. Tomorrow's negotiation wasn't just Victoria's test, it was mine as well. The Edinburgh conference room radiated understated power as Victoria and I entered together. Mahogany furnishings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, banking executives in bespoke suits arranged around the massive table. We moved as a unit, her hand briefly at my elbow, my expression professional yet approachable enough to project partnership. The presentations unfolded smoothly until midway through the valuation discussion when Victoria's phone vibrated with an alert from her communications team. A financial blog had just republished speculation about her post-scandal judgment, quoting an unnamed source within the firm claiming recent acquisitions demonstrated impaired decision-making. We both knew the source, Helena feeding the narrative. The team's prepared response distributed immediately, a firm rebuttal emphasizing strong portfolio performance and strategic growth metrics. It contained the damage somewhat, but tension rippled through the room. One critical banking partner, a conservative executive from Scotland named Douglas MacLeod, withdrew noticeably, his questions becoming pointed, skeptical when Victoria presented the final acquisition terms. I observed from my position, reading Douglas's body language, arms crossed, eyes avoiding direct engagement. Excusing myself during a brief recess, I approached him near the coffee service. "Mr. MacLeod," I said smoothly, extending my hand. "Natalie Carson. I've been coordinating the due diligence materials, but I'm also involved in the strategic planning." He shook it cautiously. "Ms. Carson, I've reviewed the portfolios. Good numbers, assuming the projections hold. They will, I said confidently, but not arrogantly. I know the recent article raised questions. Off the record, those sources have internal motivations. The data doesn't mislead, though. I pulled up discrete analytics on my tablet, preloaded performance metrics I'd insisted on having accessible. Look here. Revised portfolio valuations post-correction, risk mitigation on the disputed acquisition already yielding positive cash flow this quarter, exceeding initial projections by 12%. Douglas reviewed the data, eyebrows lifting as he absorbed the information. These adjustments weren't in the public filings. Not yet, but they're verified. Victoria doesn't avoid mistakes, she corrects them aggressively. That's why this partnership makes strategic sense. He paused, glancing toward Victoria, presenting to other executives. The skepticism lingered, but I pressed gently. We've incorporated enhanced oversight provisions if that addresses concerns. Long-term, this acquisition is positioned for returns 18% above sector averages. Douglas handed back the tablet. Reasonable points. Let's discuss specifics after the break. The remainder of the negotiations progressed more favorably, questions answered, terms adjusted slightly to accommodate banking regulatory requirements. Douglas signed the preliminary agreement before we departed, though with added quarterly review milestones that tightened oversight. Still, it closed successfully, a guarded win, but a win nonetheless. As the car drove us back to London that evening, city lights streaming past, Victoria exhaled. That article timing, she said quietly, loosening her scarf. Helena orchestrated it perfectly. It'll provide more ammunition for her challenge, evidence of external doubt affecting negotiations. I nodded, staring out the window. The deal closed anyway. Because of you, she acknowledged, but damage accumulates. I need something stronger to counter the narrative of instability and compromised judgment. She turned to me fully. Enter a formal business partnership, 12-month contract. It creates undeniable proof of professional stability, committed collaboration, shared interests. Courts and boards respect that. The proposal landed heavily, practical yet significant. I didn't hesitate. Terms? Full financial compensation, £200,000 plus continued involvement in acquisitions, legal protection for your assets as well, structured to shield your settlement from external claims. I considered the layers. Protection for both of us against family attacks. I established conditions. Exit provision anytime, no penalties. I control my professional narrative and public statements, and I retain rights to any business developments we create jointly after termination. Victoria studied me briefly, then agreed. All of it. Simon can draft tomorrow. The car entered London's outskirts. Days later at Company's House, a sterile office with fluorescent lighting and administrative staff, we registered the partnership formally. As Natalie Carson on the official documents, I filed them carefully. This wasn't rescue anymore. It was armor I'd helped construct, protecting my future on terms I'd defined. The transition to Victoria's country estate happened seamlessly, belongings transported by staff while I focused on settling into the new arrangement. The property occupied a private stretch of the Cotswolds, stone manor with expansive gardens, far enough from London to escape persistent media attention. Victoria suggested the relocation for discretion, as financial press interest continued after the Edinburgh negotiations. I agreed. The distance felt like essential space. My role evolved rapidly from temporary to fundamental. The firm was developing a luxury resort acquisition in the Lake District, and Victoria included me in strategy discussions from the outset. I immersed myself in feasibility studies, comparing occupancy projections for comparable properties regionally. One afternoon in the estate study overlooking the grounds, I identified gaps. Market research from competitors indicates demand for enhanced experiential offerings, I said, sliding compiled data across the desk. Outdoor adventure packages and local culinary partnerships could boost shoulder season bookings by 20%. She reviewed my analysis, then incorporated them into the development revisions that week. Planning sessions followed, conference calls with the acquisition team, where I advocated for operational improvements based on previous corporate restructurings I'd managed. High-end clients expect seamless integration, streamlined check-in processes, unified digital platforms for reservations and services. The operations director adjusted implementation plans accordingly. Simon called with updates on the guardianship front. Your family filed the preliminary petition through an international solicitor. They're citing post-bankruptcy correspondence expressing distress, several canceled professional meetings as erratic conduct. It's thin but sufficient for an initial hearing. I pulled archived records immediately, performance evaluations from my previous corporate role, banking records demonstrating consistent financial management, even client references praising reliability under pressure. Submit these as counter-evidence, I instructed Simon. Affidavits from former colleagues, too, prove sustained competence. He filed them promptly, delaying any expedited approval. Victoria faced escalation on her end as well. Helena submitted formal papers claiming compromised judgment, referencing the same acquisition error plus the Edinburgh speculation as pattern evidence. Late evenings became standard. Documents spread across the library table under warm lamps. I helped organize her defense, financial audits demonstrating recovery, board communications showing sound, ongoing decisions. One evening, exhaustion evident in her posture, Victoria set down a file. The scandal did impact me, she confessed. That acquisition, I rushed it, ignoring warning signs because staying occupied felt better than confronting the divorce aftermath. I pushed a revised analysis toward her, then emphasized the recovery trajectory, divestment completed, new risk protocols in contracts, transformed the narrative to resilience. She implemented every suggestion, strengthening the response Simon prepared. Those sessions built quiet trust. We challenged each other's strategies without defensiveness, refining arguments until they held firm. I handled outreach to independent financial assessors Simon recommended, scheduling evaluations that confirmed my decision-making capacity without issue. Victoria attended strategy consultations for her case, incorporating my input on framing recovery narratives. The estate study became backdrop to concentrated work, countryside views as we cross-referenced legal briefs. Simon's critical update arrived during a review session, phone on speaker. Your family learned about the partnership through company's house records. They're convinced it's evidence of manipulation, booked flights. They're coming to confront you before proceedings advance further. The line went quiet after he disconnected. I stared at the phone, resolve hardening. They weren't finished attempting to control the narrative. The doorbell rang mid-afternoon, insistent and demanding. Margaret answered, then returned to the study where I was reviewing resort financial projections with Victoria. Your family, she said quietly. They've arrived. I set down the documents. Victoria stood immediately. I'll remain nearby unless you need intervention. This is your conversation. I nodded, walking to the entrance hall alone. Simon Blackwell waited in the corridor, briefcase ready. Thomas Carson entered first, Helen right behind, my brother Derek trailing with averted eyes. No embraces, no civility, just tension thick enough to suffocate. You've crossed a line, Thomas said, voice low but hard. Partnering with a woman you barely know, hiding here like you're above family. Helen added, we came to bring you back. Your mental state is fragile. We're trying to help. I stood straight, arms crossed. Help by filing for guardianship. That's the actual agenda. Thomas's jaw tightened. You vanished in London, refused contact. We had to act to protect your settlement. The bankruptcy fund's grandmother helped you recover. Derek shifted uncomfortably, eyes flickering up, then away. I gestured toward Simon. My solicitor has the complete file. You submitted preliminary documents claiming incapacity based on erratic behavior, correspondence I sent during a stressful recovery period. That's not evidence, it's selective interpretation. Simon opened his briefcase, displaying documents. The petition lacks substantial foundation under UK law. No medical diagnosis, no recent incidents, just historical complaints recontextualized to fit a narrative. Helen's face flushed. You're being manipulated by this woman. She's exploiting you for her own legal troubles. I met her gaze steadily. Victoria isn't attempting to control my assets. You are. Thomas stepped closer. We raised you, supported you through the bankruptcy. We deserve. I interrupted. You deserve nothing beyond respect, which you forfeited when you orchestrated that abandonment at Heathrow, took my wallet, my identification, canceled my flight, all to position this guardianship quietly. Derek finally spoke, voice weak. We didn't intend it for it to escalate this far. I turned to him. You borrowed my wallet for currency exchange. Mother kept my passport for convenience. You all walked away without acknowledgement. That was deliberate. His eyes filled. Dad said it was the only method to make you understand reason. I thought maybe you'd come back and everything would resolve. I shook my head slowly. You let them use you again. Thomas tried to interrupt. Enough. Come back. We'll withdraw the guardianship immediately if you transfer management of the settlement to us temporarily. I retrieved the counteroffer I'd prepared with Simon. Here's my proposal. Withdraw the guardianship petition immediately, issue a public acknowledgement it was unfounded. In return, I won't pursue counterclaims for fraud, attempted financial coercion, or emotional distress. Helen scoffed. You wouldn't dare take legal action against your own family. I looked at each of them. Test me. Derek wiped his eyes, glancing between us. For a moment, something flickered. Regret, possibly comprehension. He opened his mouth, closed it, stepping back beside his parents. Thomas shook his head. You're not the daughter we raised. I'm the daughter you never valued, I said quietly. They turned to leave, Derek hesitating at the door. He looked back once, eyes red, expression raw with something that might have been guilt. Then he followed them out. The door closed behind them. I exhaled, the silence heavy. Simon gathered his papers. I'll file the countermotion today. Victoria emerged from the corridor, arms crossed. You handled that impeccably. I nodded, resolve settling deep. No more waiting for them to choose integrity. We returned to the study. I sat at the desk, opened my laptop, and began drafting the formal complaint for civil action, fraudulent attempt to gain control of assets, emotional manipulation, breach of familial trust.
The decision felt final, necessary. They had chosen their path. Now I chose mine. The court's ruling came decisively. Simon's counter-evidence, medical assessments confirming full capacity, financial records demonstrating independent management, affidavits from former colleagues attesting to my reliability, overwhelmed their petition completely. The judge determined there was insufficient basis for deputyship under UK standards, dismissing the case outright and noting the filing appeared motivated more by asset access than genuine welfare concern. No sanctions were imposed, but the public record spoke clearly. Word circulated through their social networks and mutual acquaintances. Relationships deteriorated. Former friends distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the optics of attempting guardianship over a competent adult child. My parents lost standing in their community. Whispers followed them at functions they once attended prominently. Derek's professional reputation suffered subtle damage. Colleagues questioned his judgment in family matters. They no longer had leverage over me or the settlement. The funds remained mine alone, protected. One evening, an email from Derek arrived. Subject line simply, "I'm sorry." He wrote about recognizing too late how his silence enabled the scheme, how guilt disrupted his sleep, how he wished he'd spoken up that day at the estate. I read it twice, feeling the pull of old connections. Then I closed the message without responding. Some bridges, once burned, remain that way.
The partnership contract concluded precisely as scheduled. We filed dissolution paperwork amicably. No contest, no complications. I retained full control over my professional identity and assets as agreed. The business ventures we developed remained jointly owned, generating ongoing revenue for both of us. Victoria prevailed against Helena as well. Board reviews accepted the period of documented stability during our partnership as evidence countering claims of ongoing compromised judgment. Helena's challenge collapsed, leaving her marginalized in firm decisions. We separated as partners turned friends, mutual respect intact, occasional consultations about ventures, but independent lives. I channeled energy into launching my own consulting practice, corporate restructuring advisory. Starting modestly with referrals from Edinburgh contacts, momentum built rapidly. Distressed company turnarounds, merger facilitation, high-stakes negotiations, engagements filled the calendar within months. The London flat I acquired became dual-purpose, professional office space below, private residence above. Renovations reflected my aesthetic: clean lines, warm tones, expansive windows flooding rooms with natural light. Success felt earned, not gifted. Victoria visited once for consultation on a firm restructuring I was advising. We walked through Hyde Park afterward, conversation easy. "You built something substantial," she said. "So did you," I replied. No romantic undertones lingered, just appreciation for shared survival. Years forward, my firm's signature project unfolded at a corporate conference in Edinburgh. Hundreds of participants, flawless execution, outstanding feedback already accumulating. I stepped onto the venue terrace during a quiet moment, evening air carrying cool Scottish breeze, city lights emerging as dusk settled. Family trust can fracture irreparably, I realized standing there, but self-worth doesn't depend on blood relations. Severing ties wasn't loss, it was liberation. The freedom to define my value, pursue ambitions without apology, and surround myself with people who choose respect over obligation. That's the genuine inheritance, knowing when to walk away and building stronger on the other side. If betrayal taught me anything, it's this: broken faith from those closest cuts deepest. Yet healing originates from within. You don't need permission to protect your peace. Sometimes ending a chapter forcefully opens the best ones ahead. If you've experienced family betrayal that changed everything, share your story in the comments. And subscribe for more real stories about choosing yourself when family chose control. You're not alone in this.